Hi everyone, my name's Drew Grote. I'm the lead coordinator here for the Indiana Esports Network. iRacing introduced a new UI for the 25 Season 4 season, and that coincides right at the start of our league races, and so I figured it probably was a good time to put out a new video on settings and information. This was going to be a pretty large video, a pretty long video. If you only need the specific settings for whatever, just go in and dial in. You can see the other video there. That's just the graphics and sound settings that you'll need. All right, so first and foremost, you'll notice that the UI looks very, very clean. Definitely an update from what was before that looked very much like it was from 2008. Although a lot of the information here is the same. They've given us some more options, which is good, but not much has changed. And a lot of if you're familiar with iRacing, you probably notice that it's not, everything kind of seems to be pretty close to the same spots. Some interesting and new features as we go through, specifically with settings, which was over there in that right-hand corner. Settings, which was the gear, is that now, and then you can pick kind of like your main setting and then your sub areas on what it is. So let's just go right from the start. A couple things to check out on your calibration. All of this should have been done when you started into iRacing. But if for some reason you switched controllers or the settings were lost, you can go do it. Now you will notice on my wheel, you'll see that it looks like the brake is a little bit depressed. That's correct. That would be an issue when you're racing because essentially it's going to constantly have just a tiny bit of brake on there. And my feet are not on the pedals, so that tells me I need to do some settings work within my specific Fanatec pedal program, which is separate from iRacing. Depending on what you have, Logitech, what is that G-Hub that you would have to do, that would be through there. So a nice way to look at it, I can double check, yep, my steering wheel moves, yep, gas pedal, brake pedal. Clutch is here, although we don't use the clutch in the league. And then the gearbox, the shifters. Just make sure you have the correct ones assigned or you're in for a surprise when you first get in. Wheel range, map range, that should all be set by the sim. Just make sure that you kind of do that the correct way. And I believe iRacing is car by car, it sets that wheel range. If you have load cells, you need to make sure that you turn that load cell on. If not, your brakes will not function correctly. Also, don't have that on if you don't have load cell brakes. You will know if you have load cell brakes because load cell brakes are particularly challenging to push down. And again, I've got some settings work here. I need to adjust the sensitivity on that. So now it's back. So I probably just need to double check that. But anyway, these are the essential these. And then finally, all these things, the driver height, driver view, you can adjust that in the car, and it's probably easier to adjust that with some keys. Off the top of my head, I don't remember, other than the keys that I normally need are the bracket keys. If you have need for any of those advanced settings, you probably aren't watching my video. All right, key bindings. Ultimately, it's up for you guys. Whatever is useful for your students, or students if you're watching this for what it is. And you'll notice that you now can decide for this car only, or all cars. That's kind of particularly useful, especially if you are switching out. You have a round wheel for ovals and like a Formula style wheel for your MX-5 or something like that. That would be pretty fancy if you have that, but that would be helpful to do that if you're switching out whatever wheel frames you have. Do make sure that you assign your pit speed limiter. You can't do it on this car, but the MX-5 does have the ability to assign the pit speed limiter, and that's helpful. These are UI tweaks that you can do. The biggest thing for me, and this will kind of be the start of its own little mini video right here, but looking at the black boxes and making sure that you have your time assigned. So this is where the little mini section will start. Hey guys, this is the black box settings if you're not watching the full video, or if you are watching the full video and you just got here, hold on. But in the Indiana Esports Network, for us and our league races, your relative black box, which is this setting, needs to be up at all times. So the relative black box should be up. You absolutely can switch back and forth between standings and your lap timings. Those are things that I would do previously. Or I do frequently when I race, as rare as it might be. But the relative black box up at all times. So that way, if and when you go off track, or if and when you need to enter the race from the pits or something like that, you're able to do that. I have that set on my Fanatec wheel to the funky switch. And then you can see right there the button lights up Dev 1 button 110. And then I can go back through and cycle through. It is kind of nice to cycle through. And then I have the rest of these just set up on the F keys. So I think it's particularly useful to have it on your wheel, so that way when it's off, you can have it done and it's easy to see. I have some of the spotter information set here. This is also, I think, copied in the audio settings, just a heads up. But it is nice to have, if you have the ability to have like a knob or maybe just 2 keys on your keyboard that you can quickly access. If you need your spotter louder, you can have that, or if it is too loud and things like that. Same thing with the voice chat, although we'll go through here. Hey, this advanced analysis down here, if you mark a custom sector, and then, active reset is what I meant to say. So set a start point, and then you can reset to the start point. That's a great way to practice. So if you know you're blowing it in, the last 4 corners, set it up 6 corners from the end, on the straight, and then just practice the ever-living daylights out of that little track. I have all of those things set to buttons on my wheel. So you see that right there, and I can just beep, and the sim sets me right back to where it is. All right. As we move forward, some interface settings. I think these are all pretty self-explanatory. Do make sure that your black boxes are set to be on. I can't imagine that would be a default off, but if in fact, make sure that those are on, so that way, because you have to leave your black boxes up at all times. We don't do a lot of the chat. I kind of discourage chat with the students, but there's the chat things. And then just some more information you could tweak. They've put in a lot of information. But luckily the information that was there that we need hasn't changed all that much. Display settings are one that it's pretty personal for you. My resolution is a 1920 by 1080. When I'm in the league, if you have triples, I just discovered resize Raccoon, which means you don't have to use NVIDIA Surround, which I do not love, and that's been nice. Now, if you go down here, there's a big debate in the sim racing community about what like FOV is, field of view, and what it should be for you. And it's called the FOV police. With that being said, iRacing does a pretty good job getting you close. If you put in, you've got all these options here, your monitor type, how wide it is, what the bezels are, and then you set your, just to get a tape measure, and you set out from where you sit in the chair to the screen with the viewing distance, and then you click compute, and it'll give you your field of view. Now, sometimes it's a little off, or maybe you put in some wrong settings. You can still change it, again, with the bracket keys in the car, but super important there to get your field of view right. The better your field of view is, the more you or your driver is going to be able to see the track. The more realistic it is, and they make better decisions because what they're seeing is what it actually is, as opposed to their field of view is set too narrow or too wide, and things look closer than they are or not closer than they are, just because they couldn't see it. The graphic setting, gosh, there are so many graphic settings that you can have. I'm currently running a 3060, which is several generations old graphics card, and I'm still running it. So during races, I'm at 85 or 90% of GPU utilization, and that's me streaming the race out. So that's not when I'm playing. That's just there. For you, I think if you have a preference, notice there's a driving version and a replay version. So the driving side would be when you're competing. On my replay side, it's what I'm testing. All of that to say, I have kind of closer to a balanced frame rate. I try and turn things pretty low, so that way I have a faster frame rate in my car. I don't really need all the detail. I would agree with that. For you, that you don't, kids probably don't need to see 7 million leaves on a tree as they're going 130 on the straight, but they do need to see the car in front of them as close to real time as possible. The faster the frame rate, refreshes, the faster you would be able to pick up that something has changed on the racetrack. So the idea with sim racing is you prioritize frame rate over graphics, but I don't know if I'm good enough to really make the difference. So somebody that is good enough could weigh in and give their opinion. But for me, when I race, I don't care if it's not as beautiful as it could be. I'm very concerned about making sure that I have the highest frame rate that my older graphics card can handle before it lights itself on fire. All right. And finally, the audio devices. This is kind of the one that I'm pretty concerned about for us, just making sure that we have it. So when we are in here, double check and make sure that you understand which device you're using. You can see I have all these different devices here. This is an actual microphone. This is my headset mic that I'm currently talking to you through. This is the output device. This is like the monitor that's attached to my computer, but not the nice one. So again, just double check and make sure you're on the right one. It's a school, so chances are, for some reason, it's been attached to the classroom projector that now is playing iRacing audio during the race. It's not great. Some audio options there. I like having a master volume control louder and softer, just because when you're racing, it's like you're trapped inside that headset if all you can hear is just people, screaming and being loud and things like that. I heard a really good suggestion, and that was turn your engines down, especially on oval racing, because you're really listening for like the wind noise in the tires. If the wind noise changes, that means that you're in the draft, you're no longer in the draft. Or same thing with tires. If you hear tires, you don't really need to hear the engine super loud. You can tell that I haven't done that. But all that to say, I thought that was an interesting point. The big thing that I need you to make sure is that you have voice chat while driving is on during the race. Scripted radio channels are fine. I've never really used it. But if you have this off, you won't hear me and you won't be able to talk to me. I am a fan of large notifications, so I can't, you do you. I like being able to see things as big as possible. Hey, and then also you need to assign a push to talk control. So for everybody that's on here, it's one thing to have this on, but then you also need to push to talk. That's a push and hold to make that work. It's fun when you get in the league for the first time and a kid pushes it and nothing works. It's push and hold. Also, nobody else can talk while you are talking. So all of that to say, just make sure push to talk is enabled. I think having voice chat louder or quieter, a button for that as well, is helpful. If you can't hear someone or someone is screaming loud during the race, you're not going to be able to go into the settings. We don't have, it's not like Fortnite where we have, sets and games and rounds in this, right? Like it's a 20-minute race. So once you're in the 20-minute race, you're kind of stuck. And then also if somebody's being particularly chatty or particularly abusive, not in our league, that person would not be racing much longer. But I also have a button on my button box here that makes, just shuts off all voice chat. For league races, don't do that because if we need to get a hold of you, the only way you can do it is through the voice chat in sim, the radio in sim, but it should be good. I think the spotter is actually really good. Just double check and make sure you understand what settings you're assigning your spotter to. If you have an interesting setup where your spotter is on a different radio or a different audio, channel than something else, you probably are not watching this video because you know more than I do. But just double check that, make sure that, you understand. If you're not hearing the spotter, it could be because it's off, or it could be because you assigned it. It's been assigned inadvertently to something that's no longer plugged in. And then you've got some ways. I think more information the better from the spotter. So I set the chattiness from the spotter to high. And then you can absolutely find some fun ones. Obviously, don't put it in Italian or Portuguese unless you speak Italian or Portuguese, because the spotter is important, so make sure to leave the spotter on. And then again, you have a louder spotter, a quieter spotter, make the spotter be quiet. So, all right. And cool, some other things that I think are interesting within this, the garage. So we don't really utilize the garage settings in iRacing, but it's here. All of our setups are fixed, but if your kids are interested in that, you can take a look through. There are many different setups. They're all loaded in. I'm on the Charlotte one now, but if you can, and notice that I passed tech. If ever it says you failed tech, it's because you were on a road course setting and it's an oval, or you were on a super speedway and it's a short track or something like that. In our league for the IEN, it's all fixed races, so you won't have the ability to adjust these, but just know it's there. Tires, you don't have the ability to make adjustments to any of that in our league. Okay, and then that's really the garage settings there. So settings for the sim, garage settings. This pencil is kind of an interesting one that's been added. It's new-ish. You have the ability to move around these overlays, which I really like. And then obviously you could force all the visible elements. You can see where things are. I like they call it a VCR. What's a VCR? But anyway, I love. I think it looks really nice, right? So all of that to say, these are all the windows that could be open, from weather to results to session information to your camera tool, all of these things here. So, yep, I'm gonna go ahead and just reset it back to default. And if I click the check mark, we're good to go. Now, in Sim, there's some admin controls. I don't think that you will see those unless you're the admin. And then this will show you all your lap times. I am just in a test session right now, which is why it says test. So if I head into the car, here's me in my car. Oh no, like my FOV is a disaster. What have I done? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my brackets and kind of dial it in until the settings are about right. Obviously, that's not right either. That's too far. And I would probably put it, for me, it's about right there. Obviously, for your driver, it's good. Those are the bracket buttons right there, just above the enter button. You will notice up here that you also can edit this UI, which is particularly nice. And again, force all of those. And yeah, I am a fan of the biggest possible everything, just to make sure that you see especially the important information. With that being said, it's here, and you just drag them around. And if you're driving by mouse, hopefully you're not doing that. But you have all these options that you can move around here. I really like this. I think this is a huge improvement from what iRacing was before, which just hadn't been updated in a long time. So it's still the same hold down, but now it's kind of animation there. If you look up in the left-hand corner, it's kind of a cool thing. You hold down exit or the escape key, and you're back out of your car. All right, there is the kind of a walkthrough through the new UI. Hopefully this was helpful, and appreciate you watching. And like I said, all these settings are customizable. You really only need a few of them that we are going to make sure are on. And it should be good. If you have any questions, reach out in Discord. Please don't reach out in YouTube. I won't check that. But reach out in Discord, and hopefully we'll get you set up, or another coach in the league or a student in the league will help you guys get going. And yeah, that should be all we had.